It's always great to be here in this place, InSpiritTruthCenter. There's no other place like it, period. I've gone and visited Unity centers, in different cities, but there's no other place just like this. Unique, special, urban inspirational metaphysics, we call it. And it's a chance to touch people, provoke thought in unique ways. There's nothing that's new about what we do. We call it new thought, but Jehudi has called it renewed thought, and I think that's a great thing. I've heard Michael Beckwith, he used to call it ancient, but now he calls it ageless, and I think that's probably more accurate, that it's ageless, that is applicable to whatever time or whatever place we are in and we find it, but the examples that we use, the things that are relevant for us, the metaphors, the analogies, the similes, the things that we incorporate into our lives, they've changed over 2,000 years. The things that were relevant to agrarian society, of herders and shepherds and so forth, what they related to is totally different than what we can relate to as urban, modern, contemporary folks. But the truths remain unchanged, immutable, changeless. The laws are changeless. We become a society that has grown increasingly accustomed to not waiting for anything. Waiting is just not something that we like to do. Now, as we get more technologically advanced, we don't like to wait for downloads or, buffering is like anathema to us. Things that used to, you'd have to go out and get a DVD or something. We have to go to the movies actually or purchase a VHS, whatever. Now we can get it almost instantly, but if a 2-second buffer happens to us, we get impatient and start fretting. Now, I remember when I was growing up, we had the magazines and comic books, and in the back of them, you could order like the Sea Monkeys or the Chia Pet or the Charles Atlas course or whatever, and it would always take 6 to 8 weeks for delivery. Can you imagine that, waiting 6 to 8 weeks for anything? We couldn't do that these days. If the shipping is more than 2 to 5, 3 business days, we get upset about it. We want it overnight. Amazon has even investigated the possibility of same-day delivery with drones. We want it instantly. We are not accustomed to waiting. We just don't like to wait for anything. We don't even like to wait in relationships. We've foregone the whole thing of courtship, of allowing something to develop over time. We've gotten internet about that. We look at a profile quickly and say, there's 3 things about them, and we discount them, write them off, and on to the next one, on to the next one, on to the next. We just aren't accustomed to waiting for anything to allow it to develop. But that was so much a part of what allowed people to grow back in the day. When they didn't have all these distractions, they had to wait. They had to allow things to cultivate. They had to allow their talents to be developed. Now these millennials that are being hired, I know you're going into the workforce now, Deanna, all these millennials that are being hired, when you encounter them, they have this attitude of, I don't want to wait for anything. I want to be CEO right now. I want to make the 6 and 7 figures. I want to get it all. I want it all. I want all the juice. They want it right now. They're not accustomed to waiting for anything. And HR folks and managers are having to deal with that new attitude. It's a different mindset. Not that it's right or wrong or whatever, but it is very different. There's some great things about it, but it's very different. And people are having to deal with that transition and how we wait for things. A lot of times waiting is a good thing because it creates that anticipation. Now, you guys know that I'm in Detroit, I'm working, my wife is here, and I have to come back and forth, and a lot of times we have to wait, and it's a wait that we don't really like, but it also creates that anticipation. They say the absent makes the heart grow fonder. Sometimes it's true, sometimes it makes the heart just grow frustrated, but my brother Keith can amen to that wholeheartedly because his wife is even further away, a continent away, an ocean away. So I understand. But once you get together, that anticipation, that there's something in there, that there's a romance in there, that people aren't willing to allow things to develop, to allow people to get to know each other. And they're missing out on something. They're missing out on that chance to not only develop the intimacy part, the physical, but the intimacy in terms of just the mental, the emotional, the spiritual, knowing that you have a friend and a kinship. You have to wait for that. And we're just not accustomed to waiting. We use all these tools and all these things as a lot of times distractions. Our scripture for this morning is taken from one that I started on Wednesday, if you dial into our prayer call. And it's from John, the 5th chapter of John, the 2nd through the 9th verses. Now there is at Jerusalem by the sheep market a pool, which is called in the Hebrew tongue Bethesda, having 5 porches. In these lay a great multitude of impotent folk, of blind, halt, withered, waiting for the moving of the water. For an angel went down at a certain season into the pool and troubled the water. Whosoever then first after the troubling of the water stepped in was made whole of whatsoever disease he had. And a certain man was there which had an infirmity 38 years. When Jesus saw him lie and knew that he had been now a long time in that case, he said unto him, Wilt thou be made whole? The impotent man answered him, Sir, I have no man when the water is troubled to put me into the pool. But while I am coming, another steppeth down before me. Jesus saith unto him, Rise, take up thy bed, and walk. And immediately the man was made whole, and took up his bed, and walked. On the same day was the Sabbath. This man had been waiting. We are not accustomed to waiting. But sometimes we can get too accustomed to waiting. A lot of times when we look at it, all these tools we have, this digital media, the things that we want instantaneously and quickly, this instant gratification culture, are really distractions. Now, you can imagine if you go into a doctor's office, they usually have the anteroom, they call the waiting room, where you sit out there and wait, and you reach for the most contemporary magazine that you can find, the current one, the new one, you want the latest. You go out into to the airport, and your flight is delayed. You're looking for something to distract you while you're waiting. You may have these things in front of you, but at the bottom line, you're still waiting. That's what's happening with a lot of us today. We have all these distractions in front of us. We have these instant relationships. We have these instant digital media tools. We have TV and radio. We have everything, but at heart, we're still waiting. This man that Jesus encountered was waiting. He was waiting for 38 years. There are some of us in here who are not yet 38. Some of us who are just over 38. But that is a lifetime of waiting. Now, we may think that's crazy. But many of us are doing the same thing. We are in our own waiting rooms right now. Waiting to live, waiting to experience the abundance that Jesus talks about, waiting to experience the peace of mind that comes from the Christ consciousness that is within. We are waiting. We're sitting here in the waiting rooms and we're picking up the newest iPhone and the iPhone 6, the 6 Plus, and the new iPad comes out on Thursday, but we're waiting. Those things are distractions to take our mind off of what we're doing. We're waiting for the new iOS, the speedier processors. We're waiting for all this, but we're waiting. Taking our mind off of what we really want, what we're really seeking, what we're really desiring. Some harmony, some peace of mind, some balance, some love. We're waiting for those things. And while we're waiting, while we're in this waiting room, we're using every distraction that we can to keep our mind off the period of time that we are waiting. And some of us, like this certain man, are waiting a lifetime. Sometimes we never have that wait fulfilled. We go on to the grave. They say the biggest waste of talent is that dash, that end line between the birth and the death dates, that there's so much potential that has been lost and waiting for those lives to be fulfilled, and they never come to fruition. All that talent, all that potential is lost for the world, and we never get a chance to experience it because we're waiting. Waiting. Why are we waiting? Now, Bethesda. There's a city in Maryland, Bethesda, great hospitals. Bethesda was a place that had a pool with 5 porches. And it was a place where the infirmed went. There was a healing pool there. Bethesda in Aramaic and Hebrew actually means Beth, meaning a house, and Seda is mercy, or house of mercy, or a house of grace. But it could also mean a house of disgrace, because we as humans, we have a very, I guess, tenuous relationship with healing and health. We are made uncomfortable by those who are suffering, by those who have an infirmity, by those who have dis-ease. We don't like to visit hospitals. I mean, when I was taking pastoral care, that's something that we get in touch with, is that sometimes you just don't feel right. You know it's your duty and your obligation, but inside there is something that doesn't always feel good going into sickness, because we have an inherent fear of it. We see what's happening with this Ebola virus that's spreading. We are torn between having so much compassion and empathy and sympathy for those who are enduring this thing that is taking out, has transformed the whole country of Liberia, transforming West Africa, transforming how we think about ourselves, our humanity. We have sympathy for it, but we have a deep and profound fear as well. We're taking every precaution. We are concerned that's in the news. We're on the airplanes we're on. We know that how things can spread, and even though they say it's a weak virus, are they telling us everything? And we get all agitated and concerned because there's still that fear. And that's how it was back then. That's why it was a house of grace, but it was also a house of disgrace, because the ill were there, the lame, the impotent, the people that we have cast as outcasts from society, the dregs, the people who we treated with AIDS when that first came out, HIV, we cast them aside. We didn't embrace them, didn't want to touch them. We were fearful of them. That's how it was. There's a house of grace, but there's a house of disgrace. And that was what Jesus came into. Those 5 pools, those 5 senses that we have can often leave us in a house of disgrace when we are just led by the senses, the 5 senses of seeing, touching, smelling, tasting, and hearing. When we're only led by our sense consciousness, it can leave us impotent. We lose our power, our spiritual power that is ours. We become lame and crippled and impotent spiritually, without the capacity to manifest, to magnify, to create, to shape, to bring about those things that we have that are ours by our birthright. We become impotent and waiting, just like this man by the pool for 38 years. We're waiting. He was waiting for someone else. Oftentimes we are the same way, waiting for someone else to bring about our blessing, someone else to bring about our healing, someone else to bring our good, when all the time that good is right inside. The good that God gave, he gave equally to everyone. He says he's no respecter of persons, reigns on the just and the unjust. What this one has and balling out, don't be jealous of it. Don't be green with envy of it, because there is abundance. There's no attack. There's no lack. There's no limitation. There's no us versus them. There is no limited resource in spirit. It is infinite abundance. But he was waiting for someone else to move him, to place him in a position to receive his good. So often we're waiting for that next situation, waiting for someone, waiting for the boss who will look out for us, the mentor who will take us under their wing, the guru, the spiritual guru that we go bouncing from here, there, and yon to find, from pillar and post, the preacher, the minister, the coach, the life coach, the trainer. Someone outside of ourselves has that key that we believe. Someone holds that key to unlock our blessing, our good. Not knowing that we're harboring that key within ourselves, carrying it along in our own little chastity belt, contained there, locked within. We don't have to find someone else. We're looking for that right relationship, the one that's going to bring us out. We're looking for that security of the one who's got it. We're looking for the producer who's going to hear our beats and put us on. We're looking for that connection in Hollywood, the one who can green light our project. We're looking for everyone else to do something for us instead of stepping out and doing it for ourselves. We're waiting. He was waiting for the angels to trouble the water. Too many of us are waiting for trouble. Now, I know that's what the scripture wasn't saying that, but that's what happens to us. We are waiting for trouble. And when we wait long enough, trouble will find us. Now, we need to be waiting in a more active sense. Waiting in the terms of when we go to a nice restaurant, there's someone, a maitre d', that greets us, and then they seat us, and then they say, your server will be such and such, and they wait on us. Now, they're not sitting around, waiting on us to order. They're actively going about doing something, providing. Do you want this? Do you want that? And that's the waiting that we need to be about as well. Waiting on each other. Serving each other. Minister Server has that wonderful name, Server. And that's what our ministry is, to serve. We need to be waiting on each other, serving each other, in service to each other. In service to those who are less fortunate, in service to those who haven't discovered their power, the impotent, the lame, the crippled, that are crippled not just in physical form, but there's so many of us that are crippled emotionally. We've been hurt and broken, battered and beaten down, not physically, although there are so many of those, too many of those where that is the case as well, but so many have it happen on that intangible level. Where there are no physical scars, but there are emotional scars that are even harder to heal sometimes. Scar tissue that is harder to wipe away when you've been told all your life that you are nothing, that you are no good, you won't amount to anything, that you are not enough of this or enough of that, not tall enough, not short enough, not beautiful enough, not thin enough, not thick enough, not enough. Too many of us have been hurt and are laying by that pool, waiting for someone outside of ourselves to take us and heal us of those hurts and those infirmities. Waiting for someone that Prince Charming, that Miss Right, that whoever, waiting for something outside of ourselves. When Jesus said that the healing is right here and right now. He asked that one question, wilt thou be whole? That's the question we all need to ask ourselves. Do we really want to be whole? Or do we get something out of the situation that we're in? Are we getting something? There's always a payoff. You don't get something for nothing. There's a tit for tat, the law of reciprocity that you're paying for. That condition that you're in, you're getting some payoff for it. Now, it could be sympathy or whatever else. It could be attention. You can just feel, I don't want to be alone. We accept so many things because we think we'll be abandoned, that nobody else will want us. Now, all these things, I was listening to Yama Brown, Dr. Yama Brown, as we were driving in this morning. She is the daughter of James Brown. And wonderful autobiography that she wrote, and also her side of the story on just growing up in that household and seeing separating the relationship she had with him as her father, because that's a loving relationship, but seeing the relationship that he had with her mother that often resorted into physical and mental and verbal and other types of abuse, and that one day she gathered that strength to be able to leave. And then Dr. Brown ended up in the same type of relationship herself. So often that pattern repeats itself because that's what we've been conditioned to. That's what we see, and that's what we accept as the model, as the norm. That's what we talk about, modeling Jesus, because we always have some sort of model in our behavior. And so why not accept the master teacher, to model Jesus, to master the Christ that was within us? She was modeling unconsciously. Those things slip into our subconscious, modeling unconsciously. Consciously, she was stated, I will never enter into a relationship with this type of person. But subconsciously, that went in and she entered into that, waiting by the pool for someone else to heal you, to trouble the waters, to dip you in, waiting. We can't wait. The wait is over. When I gave Jehudi the title, I wasn't talking about the wait is over, but he finally having a chance to speak. I was talking about it in terms of how Jesus was talking with this certain man by the pool, this impotent man. The wait is over. You've waited 38 years for your blessing, and do you really want this thing? At some point, we have to get serious about ourselves and ask that question, do we really want it? What is it that is your dream? This ministry, we look out and we see the seats that are waiting to be filled, and we have to seriously ask ourselves, do we really want it? The dreams that we have, the ambitions that we have personally to get out and to shake up the world of Hollywood, at some point we ask ourselves, do we really want it? Are we willing to pay the cost? There's a cost to be paid, as I said, with everything. There's the law of sacrifice. Do you really want it? What are you willing to give up? This man had to be willing to give up that position that he'd held. I'm sure everybody looked at him. That's the lame man. He's been here all this time. There was sympathy for him. Oh, isn't that this and isn't that that? And there was all this stuff. I'm sure he had attention, but he had to say that I'm sick of that and I would much rather be whole. Are you ready to stop clinging on to the relative security of what we think we have and to release into that broad expanse and go off and find what is waiting for us? Most of us are too insecure to release and let go. At the beginning of this book about Richard Bach called Illusions, it's one of my favorite books. I read it as a teen. And it's traveled with me, or when I lost it, I bought another copy of it immediately, but it's been a part of my library for about 30 years. Didn't realize the true significance of the book. Is called Illusions, the Diary of a Reluctant Messiah. And in the beginning there's this little story, it talks about little creatures that cling to the bottom of a stream. They hold on because their fear is that if they let go, they will be dashed about by the rocks. The current will take them and sweep them up and move them and dash them on the rocks. So they hold tight and cling to the rocks at the bottom. And then there's one creature gets the inclination of saying, I am tired of just clinging in fear, and I'd rather release and be dashed on the rocks than to die of boredom. And when he releases his grip, he floats, and the currents catch him, and they carry him smoothly over the other creatures, and they're watching, and they look up, and they see how freely he's moving, and that he has not been dashed against the rocks, and they label him special. They say he is different. He's different than us because he's moving about, and the currents are carrying him, and they start to worship him. He becomes the Messiah. Jesus came as that example to show us what happens when we release our cling, our grasp to our fears, and let go and allow the currents of spirit to guide and to carry us. Sure, you'll be tossed about. Sure, you'll be tumbled. Sure, you may bump and be bruised and battered, but you will rise and you will drift on, and you will go to places that you could never go to, just hanging on and clinging and dying of boredom and stagnation, waiting. Our spiritual faculty for the month of October is zeal, enthusiasm, passion. That's something that everyone wants in their life. Passion, something to wake up for, something to live for, something that gets your juices stirring and moves you and motivates you and propels you forward. That's what we're looking for. Adventure, excitement, not just living, not just existing. We can all do that. We've been promised much more than that. He said, I came to give you life more abundantly. Anyone can exist. You can be on a heart monitor or just a breathing machine and exist, technically, clinically declared alive, but dead in every way. Jesus said, do you really want to be healed? Do you desire? Now is the time. The wait is over. Take up your bed and walk. And Spirit family, the wait is over. Take up your bed. Walk. You can do it. I know you can. Come on, let's step out. Walk. The wait is over. I love you all. Peace and blessings. Make that move.